I have about 1,000 things I want to talk to you about, and I haven't given you a daily dose in ages. So this is going to be a long one. As I'm sure you know, Ohio has one of the strictest voter ID laws in the United States. Our voter ID law in Ohio is pretty much the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act is a piece of national legislation that would make a voter ID law a requirement for every state in the union. Now, I should mention 12 states have already passed SAVE adjacent bills at the state level. So this federal level would be only to make sure it spreads to the entire country instead of just 12 cursed states. I want to start at the beginning, and to do that, we have to go back to 2010. The 2010 midterm elections were directly responsible for almost every nightmare we're dealing with today. Because that was the election where the Tea Party got a toehold in Congress and started this fucking cult of idiocy that we are dealing with right now. Matter of fact, I'm gonna take it back a little. Do y'all remember Sarah Palin? I love Tina Fey's portrayal of it. So if you forgot who she is, go back and watch SNL and listen to her say, strategic maverick. Sarah Palin was ignorant and unqualified. She was the governor of Alaska, which is like the least populated state in the United States. Yet she thought she was qualified for vice president of the United States. And I really feel like the only reason they picked her was because she was a woman and they wanted to run two white guys, but John McCain is white enough for two candidates. So they were like, we need some sort of diversity in there. Otherwise, we can't even compete with Barack Obama, which they were right about. Anyway, Sarah Palin ran for vice president. She was always getting tripped up on very simple questions like, what does the Second Amendment say? What's in the Constitution? What's in the Bill of Rights? Clearly, grossly underqualified, unqualified. Despite all this, John McCain and Sarah Palin garnered 41% of the U.S. vote, which showed the Republican super PACs that America can and will vote for someone that's an idiot. So that was in 2008. I want to roll forward a couple years to 2010 because two very major things happened in 2010. Actually, a lot of major things happened in 2010, but there's only two we're going to talk about today. Citizens United. This was a bill that said that corporations are people and that limiting the amount of money that corporations can put behind candidates is limiting their free speech. I lied. We're talking about three things because 2010 was also the year that Obamacare was supposed to come into effect. And that didn't happen because the Republican attorney generals got together and sued. They got an injunction to stop the Affordable Care Act from taking effect as written. Let me tell you what was in the original. Medicare for everyone. You can't close a hospital if it's the only hospital in the neighborhood. You can't close a trauma center if it's in a region that receives a high level of penetrating trauma, meaning stabbing and gunshots. The Certificates of Needs Review Board was required to have community representation. Basically, there were a lot of protections written into it so that it could not be twisted and abused. And the attorney generals were like, that's not fair. So we're going to sue about it. And then we're going to use that time that the suit buys us to twist and abuse it. And that is how we ended up with the healthcare marketplace that we have now, because that's not how it was written. So the midterm elections are when we elect governors, senators, and congressional representatives. The biggest voter turnout is for presidential elections. So voter turnout for midterm elections, I think, is around like half. Republicans saw an opportunity there to put a bunch of money behind a bunch of stupid people and do some market research. So I don't remember all the Tea Party candidates that were running, but I do remember one was Christine O'Donnell. And the only reason why I remember her is because she used to be on MTV in like the late 90s, early 2000s. No, VH1. She was a VJ on VH1. And then it came out while she was running that she had briefly been a Wiccan, and then she had to make this like ad commercial. This is why I remember it, because she was like, I'm Christine O'Donnell. I am not a witch. I'm nothing like you've heard. Bitch, you are exactly as we heard. You're exactly as we. There was this other guy who had an ad about pork, and I can't remember what it was, but he had like turned his opponent into a little pig and had him oinking. That shit was hilarious. Some of the best campaign ads that we've ever had came out of the 2010 election because people were just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what stuck. And what stuck was a bunch of Tea Party people. What we found out is that if you put enough money behind them, incompetence is not a problem. So we ended up with a lot of candidates that were Tea Party Republicans, meaning people who didn't know what they were doing and unqualified for the job. The regular Republicans were like, hey, we don't think this should be happening. We think lawmakers should know the law. Tea Party Republicans were like, I do what I want. So the Tea Party Republicans were not only gridlocking the Democrats, they were gridlocking the regular Republicans. Nothing could get passed. Nothing could get done. We had 2 years of complete congressional incompetence, and that's when it started to be okay for Congress to not get anything done. Also, two more things while we're over here. The BP oil spill happened in 2010, which let us know that there was also an oil spill that happened in 2004 called the Taylor oil spill, which is one of the biggest oil spills that we have ever had. But we didn't find out about it until 6 years later because the oil execs are sneaky little bitches. So in 2012, Barack Obama ran against a jar of mayonnaise in a polo shirt that we call Mitt Romney. This man had no personality. Like, he had so little personality that salt is probably too spicy for him. So Barack Obama won the election, but he lost the battle. And I say that because the version of the Affordable Care Act that got implemented was nothing like the version that he initially helped author. And around 2011, 2012 is when we started to have this Occupy Wall Street movement where there were a lot of young white anarchists who were just over the way we run shit in this country. And they came and camped on Wall Street in front of the stock exchange. And they didn't just do this in New York, they did it in a lot of other cities. I know they did it in St. Louis because I knew a lot of occupiers in St. Louis. And this was a movement that was gaining traction, but they were able to shut this thing down so completely through mainstream media coverage that was dismissive. Because if you really saw what was going on online, especially in the camps in San Francisco, like police would wait until 3 o'clock in the morning, blow down on people who were already asleep, beat them with clubs. In St. Louis, they were pepper spraying, shooting rubber bullets, macing us, maces, pepper spray, cuffing people, hitting them with billy clubs, breaking their wrists while they were in cuffs. This was major activism going on. And the thing about it is, it was the war before the war because it was 2 years before Mike Brown got killed and the Black Lives Matter movement really started to pop off. I almost forgot about Trump and his birther nonsense. So he went on morning TV shows, afternoon talk shows as well, anywhere that he could go. And he was like, Barack Obama is not an American. He's not an American. Where's the birth certificate? I haven't seen the birth certificate. He's not an American. His father is Kenyan. He's a Muslim. He's not an American. He's not even from here. He grew up in Indonesia. He's not even an American. He did the same shit then that he's doing now. He lied. He lied loudly. He lied consistently. And he lied in public. And it worked. Because in 2011, the White House did release Barack Obama's birth certificate, and it confirmed that he was born in Honolulu, Hawaii, which is part of the United States. I don't think he should have done that because it was folding to a bully. And the nation learned that if a bully is loud enough and has enough money and publicity behind him, he can win. Back to 2012, Barack Obama, one of the best presidents we have ever had, ran against Mitt Romney, a decorated slice of Wonder Bread with excellent hair. There was a ton of money put behind Mitt Romney, and that money really paid off because even though he lost, he didn't lose by much. Obama got 65 million votes, and he got 61 million votes. They bought 61 million votes, and that's not even the worst part. Now, remember, the Tea Party represented this cult of idiocy, and this is when Fox News started saying basically that you don't need to understand the law to be a lawmaker. This is when we started having stuff like alternative facts were coming forward. Like, what is an alternative fact? A lie. It's a lie. We had a lot of personal attacks on Barack Obama and his family, on his character as a family man. Like, I remember He just couldn't say anything. One time, Henry Louis Gates, who is a Harvard professor, was he couldn't find his keys. He was coming home from a trip. And his neighbors called the police on him, and they were like, there's some black man breaking into this house. And the police came and they arrested him. And then he was like, no, I'm Henry Louis Gates. This is my house. And they were like, oh, sorry, our bad. But they had already like cuffed him and told him to assume the position. So when Barack Obama found out about it, they were like, they asked him about it in an interview. I don't remember whose interview it was. And they were like, what do you think about Henry Louis Gates getting arrested at his own home? And he was like, that officer was just stupid. Legit. Do you know they made this man apologize and sit down for a beer with Henry Louis Gates and the police officer who arrested him at his own home? This is what I'm talking about. Black and white politicians play by two completely different sets of rules. I want you to imagine for a second that a black man had been divorced 2 times, had baby mamas, and had been a 32-time felon and had been charged with rape and settled out of court multiple times. Let me know how that man would have done in a presidential election. And I really feel like the reason we got Trump in the first place was this sort of backlash to Barack Obama. I think that there was a growing concern in the population that change was going too far because, you know, gay people could get married and children could go to school and there's a black guy in a tan suit in the White House. So clearly stuff is out of control. And I truly feel that what the American people wanted to see is that this is not going to be a whole train of highly qualified, intelligent black men and white ladies, thanks Hillary, running the country for the next 10 years. And so I think that Trump is the president that best exemplifies American whiteness, the mediocrity of American white men. It was like, since this one black guy got the job, we need to show people that any white guy can still get it. No experience, no problem. Running on your business acumen when you've gone bankrupt 5 times, no problem. Grab him by the pussy, no problem. Something that Trump did very well is he positioned himself as the president that cares about white men. Joe the plumber. Which is why I think like a huge portion of people who voted for Barack Obama twice turned around and voted for Trump because they were like, he's gonna drain the swamp. He is the swamp. How are he gonna drain himself? So it was like, if you're black, you have to be literally run the Harvard Law Review, be successful and experienced. But if you're white, you just gotta be a dude. And when black people were trying to speak out directly about Trump's racism, everybody was still on the hope and change high. And they were like, we're in a post-racial country. We voted for Obama. We had one black president. Therefore, racism over, finito. And so when Trump would do blatantly racist or sexist things, they would get spun and they would be like downplayed instead of being clear about what we were really bringing into the White House. It was 2016. And Trump is in his first 100 days. And I remember the New York Times printing this article about how he had lied over 10,000 times in 100 days. Like, how is that even possible? How is that even possible? That's what? That's 100 lies a day. What? 10 lies a day for 100 days. My bad. And suddenly the same pundits who had all the smoke for Barack Obama had no smoke for Donald Trump. Trump lied so freaking much. And we didn't even call them lies. We called them alternative facts. We called them unverified information, incorrect information. We didn't call them lies because the legal definition of a lie requires you to know that the person intended to deceive. So news outlets were not calling him a liar because he could have sued for that. He would have sued them for slander if they called him a liar, or libel, I think, if they put it in writing. And they should have took the L, because by not taking the L, they allowed this man to continue to lie forever. There's so much more about this history, but I really feel like this is a great place to stop. So I'm just going to leave you with one last thing. Racism is an everybody problem, but until everybody sees that, everybody will suffer. And that's the Daily Dose.